All right, well, who's excited to be here? Thank you, especially after lunch. Oh my gosh. So we fed you, we put you into a coma, and now you came back. And if we don't excite you, you're going to leave. So that's the goal. But think about it. You have 86,400 seconds today. So stop and think. What impact are you going to make? And how are you going to propel that into transformation? Because we have the same amount of seconds. I don't get one more than you do. We get the same. I can't buy more, I can't return it, I can't exchange it, but I can make a difference with it. And that is part of transformation. So, all right, I've got a poll for you because nothing says like excitement than get your phones out. I'd rather you at least be doing something with them than looking at them and not pretending not to. So, yeah, I've been in the back the whole time. So, what word would you use to describe your organization's appetite to change? If you had one word to describe your appetite to change, what would it be? And by the way, you can use your own, right? Change sometimes is a four-letter word. So what one word would you use to describe your organization's appetite for change? Now I feel like Jeopardy, right? Eager, hungry, constant, slow. I love that one. Open, willing, enthusiastic until it fails. Hesitant, because you're thinking it will fail. Ready, slow, eager, always, strong, reluctant, innovative, motivated. So as you think of all these words that are hitting the stage right now, how do organizations do it? So to give you an idea, I've done it at AT&T. We opened the Big Data Center of Excellence in 2012. Long before, by the way, AI and data was sexy, we were already doing it. Then turned around and did it at Fidelity Investment. Now, when you think of change with AT&T, if you think about it, it was your phone that used to, I loved when I explained this to my kids, we used to have a rotary dial phone and they were like this, what, were dinosaurs still on Earth? No, dinosaurs were not still on Earth. But when you think about it, the telecommunications company had to constantly change. And as they evolved and changed, they had to do things differently. And we had to continuously evolve. Steve Jobs called and said, could you put my Mac on a phone? And I'm like, you have flippin' lost your mind. So that's what we did, because he had a lot of money and a lot of influence. And we were able to do it. But if you think about transformation, it is extremely hard. I remember Randall Stevens' son, who was president of AT&T, I said, listen, we have to have a new image. I need you in blue jeans, and I need you in sneakers for the next meeting. And I remember he looked and he was so excited, he took the sneakers out of the box right before he walked out on stage. And the jeans still had the tag on the back. And I'm like, that's not quite what I meant by organizational change. I don't think the outfit's going to make your message. But when you think about change, and you think about some of the things from earlier that you've heard, and by the way, I have to read some of them. So we heard that there's a fear of missing out. You have FOMO. What is it going to be at a conference? Content networking. You have dreams. You have niches you have to be able to do. You have to learn. You have to have certification, collaboration. You have to be one of a kind. And you have to have a constant mission. So if you have this North Star that is going to be brilliant, and then you have a plan of action, what's the one component, by the way, that becomes the issue? It's not that people don't want to change. It's not that there isn't a need for change. It's what I call the frozen middle. At Fidelity, I called it the head nod. People would walk in, I'd tell them what we needed to do. They would smile, and they would look at me, nod their head, and say, we are all in. Let's go, baby. And then they'd turn around and do whatever they wanted. And they'd come back, and I'd say, where are the metrics? How did you change? And they'd say, oh, you were serious. Well, yes, that's why words came out of my mouth. So when you think about organizational change and you have that North Star and you have the messaging, you've got to have the hook for an industry to follow you and for employees that want to do it. Because without those two key components, it's going to fail every time. And I can't tell you the amount of times that it has failed because people weren't willing to take a risk and willing to make a change. So I'll give you a fun story. When I was at AT&T, I did bring the iPhone to market. I called it Pandora's Box because at the time I wasn't sure if we were bringing good or evil into the world, so I figured why not name it that. I was under a strict NDA, and my husband worked for Kodak at the time. And he brought home a device and said, I got this mobile device here. They want to do pictures, but Kodak's board just turned it down. And I remember looking at him and I'm like, how much stock do we have in Kodak? Because we're about not to have any money. And when you looked at it, Kodak passed on the deal because they said our film is enough. Think about that. Our film is enough. People will always want to do film. The industry didn't realize what they had, which by the way was a better product at the time than the camera on the iPhone. But when you look at different pivot points in an industry, that was the pivot point that Kodak lost. And there are books and stories about it to this day. But it was a pivotal moment that they could have changed an industry, but they were unwilling to take a risk because they didn't know if their audience would follow them. So one thing when you think about conferences, what makes us follow you? What makes us want to get out our pocketbooks and write you a check if we're a corporation? But more importantly, as an individual, what makes me want to attend? What makes me get excited about an event? What makes me say, I'm going to personally write a check? Now, how many of y'all, this is an easy poll, you get to raise your hands, the old-fashioned poll. How many of you would expect that executives would write checks for up to $20,000 a year to attend one of your events? Raise your hand if you think we would do it. So I have a few. How many of you would be shocked if I were to tell you not only do I do it, but I can name 7,000 people right off the bat that do it with me?
This is for one event.
This is for one event that I want to go to that Google doesn't want to pay for, or AT&T didn't want to pay for, or Fidelity didn't want to pay for. But I wanted to make sure I was at the event because of the content, the network, and the collaboration I would have while at the event. So while y'all are thinking we've got to get the corporations and change an industry, your last speaker on the video was correct. What's the hook to get the next generation there? What's the hook to get the people there? ESG is a hot topic any way you want to look at it. You write ESG on anything, environmental sustainability and governance, by the way. I'm a certified speaker in that, so I get to pass the acronyms around that I have to memorize. But if you think about it, people want to hear about it, but they don't even know what it is, and they don't know how to take the first step. Oop, little feedback, that's all right, we'll get it fixed. And I can yell loud enough, never have to worry. I have a 22 and a 23-year-old daughter. I've done this for a living. But if you think about how to make the change, how do you get the end result or the ROI? How do you get the growth in the industry? How do you get people to adopt what you're selling? Because if you think about it, each one of us are in a selling job. I'm having to sell to my team. We're going to transform a company that's done it the same way for 25 years. And if I hear one more time, but that's the way we've always done it, I'm like, why? And there isn't a good answer. So it's about how do you make modifications to what you do in order to provide a sense of purpose that everybody wants to conform to and to do. And you think about it, I went back and started by, we have 86,400 seconds. I'm going to break that down a bit more. Microsoft did a study in 2015, and actually it's a little worse today, but in 2015 Microsoft did a study. And it was a study with a human and a goldfish. And they wanted to see the attention span of a goldfish. And the attention span of a goldfish was 9 seconds. They could hold their attention for 9 seconds. The stunning part of the survey was humans' attention span was 8 seconds. So now we're losing to a goldfish. So in an industry that's built on conferences that has to hold your attention, You now have 8 seconds to get them to sign paperwork, to get excited about it, to figure out who's going to be there and speak, and to get the audience willing to join you, and you have 8 seconds to do it. So when you think of that 86,400 and you boil it down to 8, your time frame got a little less. And it becomes not about necessarily the location, I've attended conferences in crazy places, let me tell you. In fact, there are some that I'm like, okay, who thought of this? And yet we go. And we manage to get there by rail, by car, by plane, and any other way we can do it. Because we want to hear what the speaker has to say, we want to hear the messaging, and we want to see the technology. And if you think about it, AI is a big piece of that. And as you've seen from some of the exhibitors, there is a great way of being able to do it. And think about the other thing, the ROI. You looked at who was the most panel that everybody went a little crazy on the questions. It was the CFO panel, right? The CFOs are the ones that write the checks. They're not the hated enemy, by the way. They're the ones that need the information. So how are you able to transform in a way that you give them the information they need? And by the way, this was a discussion we were having in the hall earlier. Your sales teams can still get credit for a sale when they don't want to necessarily attribute it to a conference because it could take money out of their pocket. The CFO needs the numbers to be able to say, this is what happened at the conference, this is all the people we met, and these are the connections. And it becomes a fight. So you've got to be able to articulate it, you've got to be able to do it, and you've got to be able to do it differently. Nothing any different than when you think of change at Google. Google made money by ads, think about it. It was very simplistic. You talk, an ad appears, it's a fantastic platform. But you think about how Google's had to evolve. Google's had 25 years of doing the same thing, and our data is far superior. But look at the competitors now. You have Microsoft, you have AWS, you have Snowflake, you have Databricks. I could go on and on and on. We have to continuously reinvent ourselves in order to think of what's next. How are we going to capture our audience in a different way than someone else? Where do we make mistakes and where do we quickly learn and pivot? Think of our first release with our notorious chatbot that didn't go as well as we expected. Name wasn't quite there. We then re-released it. We put in the other attributes that we had already tested and everybody was all in. But it took time and it took a cost. And that cost went to stock in case anybody missed it. But you think about it, when you're out to change an industry and you're out to make changes, you've got to thaw the frozen middle because whatever you say, everybody is going to nod their head in agreement. But not everybody is going to actually put their feet in motion to actually execute it. So when it comes to execution, that's your biggest challenge. How do you do it in such a way that is going to be different and differentiate you than everyone else? And that's the hook that you've got to have. That's your North Star. That's what's got to differentiate you from everyone else. You've got to up the game on the content and the technology. Trust me, we get technology every day of the week at work. Our buildings are phenomenal. Microsoft, incredible campus. You look at SaaS. There isn't a company out there that doesn't have the technology that we play with every day. We want something different when we go to shows. We want to be able to see different, do different, immerse ourselves differently, and have a net result that is different. That's the key as we start going through and you start thinking, how do we change an industry? How do you get people and drive them there? Think about it. During the pandemic, in an instant, we had to change. Everything had to go online. Crazy, right? But you did it. Why? You didn't have a choice. What if tomorrow you didn't have a choice and you had to reinvent everything you do? The one thing we do with my team that I have done every time in the past, I go old school and I get a whiteboard. And we throw up every idea we can on how to make changes to the current team or structure that we're looking into. So if we want to revamp finance, how do we do it? If we want to revamp marketing, our building systems, what are different things that your team is bringing to the plate that you can start going through? And then the first thing I do is I put up a column. I call it my EBITDA positive score. Who's going to be for and who's going to be against? And we literally start designing around change for how many yeses can I get for the low-hanging fruit? How do I get people all in? Because if I can get a small sliver of people going, I can then start tackling the really hard things that we have to tackle. But I've got to get some wins under the belt because it brings confidence to the team, it brings excitement to the company, and then they're all in to give you a little bit more money for the CFOs and carte blanche to be able to do a little more with the teams you have. But you've got to be able, as you look at it, to say, what is that net promoter score? What's the EBITDA positiveness that we're going to have? What's the impact we're going to have? And then, how do I turn it into success? What does it look like? What is the optimal goal? But when you think about it, that's how you start changing an industry. Think about this morning's speaker. They talked about NAP. And by the way, I worked at AT&T. Thrilled to have an acronym I actually knew. As you go through all of the different companies I've been at, we're really big into acronyms. I still can't figure half of them out. But as you think about it, they took a risk. They took a chance. They were able to say, this is what I want to do. I think it'll work. What's the worst thing if I don't do it? They took the chance to make it work and to have a different story. That is exactly how companies continuously reinvent themselves. That's why they're successful no matter what. They pick their North Star, they go with it, and is it times it going to fail? Absolutely. Is it recoverable? 99% of the time. There isn't anything, people always laugh, they're like, but if we code it that way, it's going to be a problem. And I said, there isn't anything you code that I can't uncode or change or modify. So how do you pivot the next time? And I think when you're on the journey to transformation, you've got to remember, you've got to continuously pivot. So if you think about it, it comes down to, and I laugh, I always call it grit. You got to have grace for the journey because when you're starting, not everybody's going to be with you. And you have to have resilience because it's never going to work the first time, I find, half the time. And then when you're doing it and you're in the heart of it, it's how to continuously invent and then reinvent. Because you've got to go back to that whiteboard. I always laugh. A friend of mine has a sawmill, and he said if I could just figure out what to do with the sawdust, I'd make a fortune. And he did just that, by the way. That's your little fire starters now that you go by, and all of us pay a fortune for a little easy button for, to start a fire when we're camping to make it look good. He figured out what to do with sawdust. That's what you've got to do in any industry. Figure out what to do with the mess left behind. So then if you think about it, you go to the T, which is tenacity. You have to be tenacious in everything you're doing, and you've got to have that positive outlook. If you're sitting at your desk and you look like the world has just shattered, everybody around you is going to look at you and go, oh my God, if she can't make it work, no one can make it work. So you've got to bring an excitement and resilience every day that is not easy. And it's so funny, everybody laughs. I have a brooch on today. I wear a different brooch every day. And the reason is it goes with my mood. That way I don't have to actually say it out loud some days. I do have 860 pins. I do have snake pin. People in the audience mouths just dropped. I do have snake pins. I have every animal you can imagine, in case somebody is in a meeting that I want to make sure they know where I think of them. Today is the sunshine. You've got to pack your own, because let me tell you, it's not going to be easy as you go on the journey. And there are days when I wear a pin that has a cloud and a lightning bolt, because it's like, dear God, what next? And you think, how are we going to be resilient? How are we going to get past this? But that's what also you have to rely on the team. And you've got to be able to look at it and say, how do we do different? How do we become resilient, and how do we do it over and over again? And by the way, I don't know about you, but I have a lot of age groups that work for me. Some of them would swear I think my shoes are older than some of them. That's all I'll say. And I have some really, not so old shoes. But when you think about it, you've got to reach generations that didn't have the same upbringing as you, didn't have the same environment as you, and you've got to convince them that sometimes 37.5 hours is not an actual work week. And just because we have these lovely cafes and micro kitchens and breakfast, lunch, and dinner, there are times you actually have to show up before that breakfast starts and stay after that dinner to actually get the job done. And it's convincing them that the purpose is so exciting and the reward, if nothing else, is going to be their name in lights, that they want to do it. You've got to get them to opt in to your mission. Because if they're not opting in, they're going to be your biggest problem. I always laugh. I have run cybersecurity multiple times in my career. And at one point, someone said, with cybersecurity, what scares you the most? It was never the attacks. I could thwart off most attacks. I've had some crazy ones, but I've been able to thwart them off. It's the employees that I always worried about, because they could tank things quicker than anyone else. So when you think about that frozen middle, you've got to figure out how to unlock the key to success with every one of your employees to turn them into advocates for you. Let them be your cheerleaders. Let them be your entire cheerleading section to make this work, or your transformation will turn around and fail. And then you've got to figure out how to get a whole new cheerleading team to be able to come on the scene and get it done. But it is not always easy. But I would tell you the reward is always phenomenal. So back to my AT&T story. I did laugh. By the end, I did have Randall, actually, he would call me the cool kid every time he saw me. I wasn't sure how to respond after a while. But I got him wearing jeans every day. I got him to take the label off. I got him to wear normal sneakers, not the ones that cost, $20,000. Because as I told him, normal people didn't wear those as graciously as I could. But it was how to change an entire company. But I had to start at the top. I had to get through the frozen middle, and then I had to figure out how to engage the next generation to want to do it. Because people didn't want to work at AT&T. They're like, it's a phone company. No, it's a technology company. We just happen to have a phone with it. So it was a different messaging and a different spin. And if you think about it, fidelity. We came up with the green line. It's the simplest thing in the world. But how did you get people to do it? I want to be on the green line because I want to retire one day. It seems simplistic, but it was one of the ideas thrown up on a whiteboard at one of our sessions. So think about it. We took a simplistic idea and changed an entire company to make it work. And then when you turn around and you look at some of the other companies that have not done it and the ones that are successful, it's that key vision, never saying no. You look at Steve Jobs, look at how many times he was fired for it. And then you look at the success and outcome in the end. It's the tenacity that keeps going, that keeps you through it, that makes you be able to believe. You look at this morning, nap. It could have been a huge failure, but it wasn't. It was a huge success. Why? Tenacity, a risk, and a willingness to do what no one thought could be done. I always laugh. I give speeches. I work at High Point University as an innovator, and I give speeches to our next generation. So to make you laugh, I was in the middle of working with kids. There was about 350 in an audience, and they looked at me, and I said, "You can ask me anything." By the way, never do that. You can get very much entertainment. One kid said, "What's wrong with our generation?" I'm like, "God, you're the last question. I don't have time." But as they started going through and cycling through, and the one thing that we started realizing is the kids wanted a purpose. They wanted to feel they belonged. They wanted to be able to say they did something to make a difference in this world, and they would do anything, including spend their parents' money, to make it happen. Yeah, if anybody has seen High Point, their campus is really nice. But you think about Nido Qubein. He changed a school that was dilapidated, falling apart, and he said, I'm going to go in and work it as a business. I'm not going to think about it except a business. My business is getting parents to give me money, simplistic idea, change all the buildings, turn them around, hire the best people in the world to be on our campus 24/7, and get everybody that we can to want to be there. And he did it in less than 10 years. It's a university that also has, to make you laugh, they owe nothing to any bank. Their CFO is extraordinarily thrilled. They're able to get donations of up to $300 million a month. Why? Because he sells it every day. He wakes up, sleeps, eats, and breathes it. And every day he walks in and says, how can we make a difference? How can we put things on the board that's going to be different? So I would encourage you as you leave here, and you're going back to wherever you are, mine's Raleigh-Durham, but as you go back, what does your notes look like? Get the sticky notes and the whiteboard out. What are you going to do that's going to be different, differentiate you in the market, differentiate you in everything you're doing, and make you stand out to where everybody wants to come every single time to your conference? There are 3 conferences to this day I personally pay for to go every year. I wouldn't miss it. And everybody always laughs. They always know they can find me there. It's the same set of group of us. And the reason is, and by the way, it's not location, because they picked the god-awful location, and they did it in the middle of summer. It's in Florida, by the way. No offense to Miami. It's Orlando. And they put the conference every year, and they do it in August when I swear a hurricane hits every year. And we still go every year. And the thing is packed. And the reason is we don't want to miss it. It's that fear of missing out, because if we don't go, we're going to miss something, and we're going to miss the excitement of it. You look at the women's conference in California. I kicked it off this year. It was standing room only. We sold out of tickets in the first literally 2 minutes we opened it up. So think about that. 2 minutes, 5,000 tickets gone, standing room only. And the reason was, there isn't many of them that women go to, especially in tech, and they wanted something different. You look at Chief. I'm a part of Chief. It's a women's network group. And you look at Chief. It's become a billion-dollar business. Why? They created something no one else had. They gave a place for people to go that didn't have an all-boys club that wanted something different. And they monetized the heck out of it. And that is the key that you're looking for. What's a niche and what's not there that you can put in that wants every single one of us to personally put out our own dime to pay for it? Because Chief is $7,500 for any woman who joins. Most companies don't pay. And yet, there's a waiting list a mile long. And you look at some of the other ones, it's because they've created things people haven't thought of. Get your sticky notes out, get your innovator caps on, take your 86,400 seconds, and don't let anybody out until they're done. Pizza and pastries always work, in case you're curious. But these are things you can do. So I'm going to close. I'm going to be able to open for a few questions. And you can ask me anything. I'm an open book. You can ask anyone that cringes every time I do this. There isn't anything I won't answer, so feel free to ask anything.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, you can put it in through your mobile app, through the platform, or just raise your hand. Back there. No, actually, I'll ask the first question. Over here, right here.
What's the event?
What's
the one in Orlando, Disney Data and Analytics.
What is it again?
Disney Data and Analytics. Disney started it for their employees. This was, they started in 2000 for their employees. Little known fact, Disney has 1,600 data scientists that sit in Switzerland. And they started it to where they could bring their employees over. The ones in the industry running data found out about it, and they said, we want to attend. So Disney said, all right, we'll let you do it, but it'll cost X amount of money. It became the hottest ticket that you could then get. And then we were like, could we sponsor it? Could we give you money? Well, Disney's a machine. So the first thing they said, of course you can write checks and give us money. You can sponsor the coffee, you can sponsor the break, you can sponsor breakfast, and now it's become an entire event. But they do bring in the best speakers, they do get the best talent, and nobody misses it, and they do close Disney's park so we can go through it.
Okay, thank you. Right there, thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. My question is, how do you get the attention of college-age students?
That's a great question. One thing is you have to match their energy. So that's number one, and match their passion is number two. They are passionate about environmental. They are passionate about sustainability. They're impassioned to, this is the fun part, they want to be CEO, they want to be CIO, they want to sit in the C-suite, they don't want to do the hard work, they don't want to pay their dues, but yet they want the same salary. And as I told them, it ain't going to happen on my watch, my lovely friends. So if you want to know how to do it, and I teach a data class there, they call it Scared Straight for Data, by the way. I know the creepy. So when you think about it, it's getting their attention for where they're at. They love to game. They love devices. They love to be able to do things that they feel will attract the attention of their friends, and you've got to be able to play and lean into that. So anytime that I'm there, I gamify the heck out of everything. And I make them, where we have our little, you can put in your polling, I take that to a whole nother level when I'm on campus, because I want them to do it. The other thing is, I teach them how to go get a job. And nobody's willing to spend time teaching them how to get a job. And by the way, parents line up for the same session in case the kids miss anything. Because they feel their kid isn't listening. And in all sincerity, it's the hook that not only gets them, but you get the parents with them. And that's and the reason why I'm able to do it, and that's why, like on my team right now, I have incredible amounts of young people that want to be on it. I typically, not at Google, prior to Google, I would hire 120 interns a year. Most people are like, oh my God, how'd you survive it? It was giving them a chance and an opportunity, but I'm the first to hire and the first to fire. And the kids learned that, and yet they still came back because I treated everyone fairly, and I treated them the same, and I gave them a responsibility, and nobody had done that before. So, great question.
All right,
I'll bring you to the next one.
I'm going to jump in. You said something that we don't hear anymore. You fired someone.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm listening to what you're saying, and as far as the middle and all that, and leading people and making them impassioned. How about firing laggards? I mean, is that okay, or?
You'll find, you'll laugh. Most people that I've had to let go in my career, we're still best friends. Which most people are like, are you kidding? No. You can gracefully let someone go as gracefully as you hire them. Because they made a choice not to do the work. They've made a choice not to show up. Now, if it's a layoff because you have no choice, that's another reason why. But you've given them every avenue to make a difference, to be seen, to be heard, to make a change, to make a pivot. And if they haven't taken it, then they've also made the choice to not work there anymore. But it all becomes about choices. But you've got to set that tone right from the beginning. Because I think in life, we all have choices. We choose to get up every day, get out of bed. We choose to come to this conference. You choose every path you take, whether or not you realize it. And people say, but you don't understand. And this is why I will laugh. Listen, at 18, my parents gave me the grace with a suitcase to go find my way. I'm first generation high school and college. I didn't have anybody to tell me how to make my way. I had to go find my way and forge my way. And there are days when I thought to myself, when I got up at 3 a.m. to go work at UPS at 4, are you kidding me? I really don't want to work there at 4 a.m. But I went every day with a smile because I knew I had to get a piece of paper if I was going to be more than what was before me. And my dad, love him, self-made mechanic. And when he passed, I swear, when he passed, he still never had a dime in his pocket. Probably the happiest man you've ever met. Why? Because he invested in people to make a difference every day. And that was the lesson and legacy that he left. So when you think about it and firing people, it's giving them a chance to give a legacy and helping them with a leg up for a different place or a different path.
Well, on that note, thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you.